Hello and welcome to TechFunnel.com's interview series for Women's History Month. My name is Danny White, and today we have joining us Stephanie Stahl. Stephanie is the General Manager of Content Marketing Institute, where she leads the brand's event, digital, print, and e-learning operations, and gets to work with the best team on the planet. Previously, Stephanie served as the Vice President of Content Marketing for UBM's technology portfolio, providing strategic guidance on content development, content optimization, audience engagement, and go-to-market platforms for technology clients. She has worked for UBM for more than 2 decades, helping to shape new multimedia content and event offerings. Additionally, Stephanie has served as Editor-in-Chief of InformationWeek for many years. She lives in the Washington, D.C. area with her husband, her 2 teenage daughters, and so many pets that some might call it a food chain. Welcome, Stephanie. Thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
It's so nice to be here. Nice to chat with you again.
Thank you. So we're going to jump right in. I know I just spoke a little bit about your background. So if you can tell us just a little bit more about your background and how you personally navigate life as a successful woman in the content marketing industry.
Yeah, sure. Well, like a lot of content marketers, I started as a journalist. I went to journalism school. It was my goal to be a journalist in a career. And after many years of writing and editing and researching for a tech media brand, I joined this emerging and growing part of the company that was creating content for sponsors. And
awesome.
Back then, it was kind of the dark side, right? It wasn't pure journalism, and I was on the dark side, but it was very interesting, very new, fast growing. And of course, now, we've come a long way. And
absolutely, yeah.
I was always a believer that great content is great content, regardless of where it comes from, whether it comes from a journalist, a brand, an agency, an association, a consultant. Great content is great content. And so now that CMI is part of this company's portfolio, I'm privileged to have the opportunity to educate the community on ways to excel in content marketing. So awesome.
I like that line, great content is great content, no matter where it comes from. So I think I'm going to steal that from you and use it sometime.
Steal it as many times as you want to say it, because I'm a big believer in it. I mean, absolutely. At the end of the day, it's all up to us to create content that people want to read, that they can learn from, that they can be entertained with, that's factual, that has personality, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, as long as it's great content. Doesn't matter where it comes from.
I'm right there with you. So how do you celebrate the contributions of women on your team and empower them in their daily work?
Good question. I have so many amazing women on this team, and men too, but we have such an amazing team. And I guess really, I try to be open-minded. I try to discourage, sort of that we've always done it this way kind of thinking.
Status quo, yeah.
Yeah, status quo, and that, new ideas can come from anywhere. I encourage anybody to come up with ideas. The head of marketing might have a great idea for operations. Operations might have a great idea for sales. Sales might have a brilliant idea for social media. Ideas should come from anywhere. They should be celebrated if they're great ideas. Sometimes they don't work, but that's okay. As long as we're all open-minded. And I think it's important to empower the decision makers on the team too. Like, I try to stay out of the way and let them do their thing and help when I can or when they ask for it. I think it's also important that we have a culture that embraces a flexible work schedule. Sometimes the most brilliant and creative thinking might happen between the hours of 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. It does for me.
It does for me in the evenings. Like after 5 p.m., I think the best.
Yeah, right? So, if you want to do a yoga class in the middle of the day, or your child has a sport, or you need a couple hours to block off just to get stuff done. I mean, I fully embrace that kind of flexible schedule. We all have meetings we need to be in.
Yes.
We have deadlines we have to meet. There are things that have to get done. But generally speaking, I think it helps to empower a team to want to work hard, to think creatively, if you can give them that kind of flexibility. So I really embrace that around here.
Awesome, awesome. So as your brand's general manager, how do you work to execute your vision and keep your team on the same page? You obviously have a very large team with Content Marketing Institute and UBM. So how do you keep everybody working together and in collaboration and being on the same page?
It sounds a little cliche, but it is all about communication, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
We have a fully remote team. And when I say fully remote, I mean no one is in the same office. We have people all over, California, Ohio, Michigan, Philadelphia. I'm in the DC area, Australia. We're all over the place. And we do have some teams who are geographically close to each other. And I encourage them to get together, have a meeting in Starbucks instead of on the phone or, whenever they can. So communication and using the collaboration tools that we have, things like what we're using right now, we're talking face-to-face here, are extremely important. And thankfully, technology is so advanced. We've got plenty of great technology at our disposal to make this collaboration possible. But I also encourage one-on-one meetings, team meetings, cross-team meetings. We have 2 events a year, and pretty much the whole team comes to those events. And we make the most of that face-to-face time. And we try to squeeze one in the middle too, where we can bring everybody together for a strategy meeting. And so that kind of face-to-face is important. But outside of that, it's talking like this. It's a lot of conference calls. I'm a big believer in, the 15, 20-minute conference call versus the full hour, because otherwise we could sit on the phone all day. And we make it work. In fact, we make it work really well. So.
Awesome. Hopefully some of our audience can learn from that, especially the 15 to 20-minute meeting times.
It's very effective. When you've got that cutoff, it's amazing how much you can get done.
Absolutely. So over the last few years, workplace diversity and inclusion have obviously been discussed at length from both sides, men and women. So what are some of your views on that subject, since it is Women's History Month and we're celebrating women in the workplace?
It's always a good thing to celebrate women in the workplace, no matter what month it is, right? I mean, it's certainly something that needs to be a priority. And for a large company, a large global company like the one I work for, I feel proud that it is a priority to engage and support a diverse workforce here. I also think it's important that we all take part in it. It's one thing for the company to have an overall
view.
Yeah, for any company to have an overall view. That's fantastic. And to make it a priority is great. But we need to see it at all layers. So, and not just in the hiring that I do for my own team or that another team does, but I think about, inviting people to write for a blog or to speak at our events and things like that. We need to constantly be thinking about ways to make sure we're diverse and inclusive, and we all have a role to play in that.
Absolutely. Good advice. So what is the best and the worst advice that you've ever received throughout your career?
Okay, let's see. The best advice, probably to be decisive. As a leader, you need to be decisive. And I could have just said, well, let me give you 3 things, but that wouldn't be decisive, right? That would be taking the easy way out. So I guess the best advice I got, from a former manager was, there's always going to be times where there are multiple ideas, or maybe there are disagreements about an approach or strategy. At some point, you need to be decisive, make the decision, stick with it, no waffling, and go for it, make the most of it.
Good advice.
So I thought that was very helpful advice. Probably the worst piece of advice I've ever been given was that your employees' personal lives are separate from their work lives, and you don't have to worry about them. You don't have to worry about their personal lives. You don't have to worry about what's going on at work. And I think that's BS. I think I think that's a bad strategy, but I think just treating people as people first and employees second makes a much healthier, more trusting type of work environment. And so
absolutely, I'd agree with that.
It definitely makes for a better place to work. So
absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today, Stephanie. We really appreciate your time. Thank you guys for listening to this interview. For these and other interviews and topics, please visit us at techfunnel.com. Connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and on Instagram, and subscribe to our weekly newsletter so you can stay up to date on what's happening in the industry.